Good morning, everybody. It's a beautiful day. Great time for some council meetings. I'd like to begin this morning by reading an advisement. Please be advised, North Frontenac council meetings are recorded. By attending a public meeting of council, you are consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded. Members of council, staff, delegates, and attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal action if their actions result in inappropriate and are unacceptable behavior or comments. Okay, so we call the meeting to order at 9:02. The Council of the Township of North Frontenac is conducting a public meeting for planning proposals under the Planning Act to consider the following: a zoning bylaw amendment to rezone a property located on Parsons Lane from limited service rural LSR and residential waterfront RW to limited service waterfront LSW. Please be advised, this meeting is to provide members of the public an opportunity to provide comments in support or in opposition of the proposed development. Any person who wishes to receive a copy of the minutes of the public meeting, a copy of the report on the proposed amendment, or notice of the passing of the proposed amendment to the Township of North Frontenac zoning bylaw should provide their full name, address, email address, and contact numbers to the clerk following the meeting. If you are attending the meeting in person, please add your name to the sign-in sheet. If a person or a public body specified under the Planning Act does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of North Frontenac before the proposed amendment to the Township of North Frontenac zoning bylaw being approved, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Township of North Frontenac to the Ontario Land Tribunal and may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. We begin this gathering by acknowledging and celebrating these traditional lands as a gathering place of the First Peoples and their ancestors who were entrusted to care for Mother Earth since time immemorial. We do so respecting both the land and the Indigenous people who continue to walk with us through this world. Today, the Township of North Frontenac is committed to working with Indigenous peoples and all residents to pursue a united path of reconciliation. Item 4, approval of the agenda.
Moved by Councillor Regent, seconded by Councillor Good. Be it resolved, the council approves the agenda for the public meeting regarding zoning bylaw amendment file Z0124 dated April 26, 2024 as circulated.
Any comments? In favor? Motion is carried. Are there any disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? Seeing none, we go on to the zoning bylaw amendment application.
Moved by Councillor Regent, seconded by Councillor Good. Be it resolved that council receives for information the planning report from the county planner regarding application filed Z0124 for zoning bylaw amendment, and that council will consider a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 5519 later in the regular meeting.
Okay, this is where we. The lady who's going to speak to us is Jenny Kapuska from the county's planning department.
Hello, that's better. Thank you, Fred, for the loan of your microphone. This is an application to rezone a parcel that was subject to a consent application. Generally, we do not support split zoning of properties. It just doesn't make sense, and it makes it challenging for the owner to understand what the permitted uses are. And given the size and location of this, it makes sense to have this as a limited service waterfront rather than the current zoning on the property. The split zoning is more for larger properties where you want to try and control uses to the water versus away from the water, but the intent of this is more a residential waterfront lot. So that is what the application is for.
Are there any comments from council? Seeing none? So are there any comments from the public, either from the council chambers or online?
If anyone online wishes to make a comment, please use the raise hand feature. Seeing none.
Okay. So every now and then I have to get instructions on how to actually do this because we don't do it very often. Seeing that there are no comments from either people in the council chambers or online, we'll consider the public comment section closed and the meeting is up for adjournment.
Moved by Counselor Regent, seconded by Counselor Good. Be it resolved, the council adjourns the public meeting at 9:07 a.m.
Comments? In favor? Motion is carried. The public meeting is closed. Next up is our regular council agenda. You've already heard the advisement about participating in a meeting, and you have also heard the additional land acknowledgement for our Indigenous brothers and sisters. So item 3, the approval of the agenda. Sorry. Right?
Mr. Mayor, I ask that we move item 11G to the front of the admin reports because we have people here interested in that report.
Anybody have any objections to this? Motion.
Moved by Counselor Hudel, seconded by Counselor Hermer. Be it resolved, the council approves the agenda dated April 26th, 2024 as amended, and that council approves going into closed session followed by rise and report ahead of the introduction and reading of bylaws, and that item 11G will be moved to item 11A.
Comments? There's more of that item than what we started with. Essentially, what we're doing is moving the closed meeting and the rise and reports further up in that item further up in the meeting as well. So any final comments? In favor? Carried. Okay. Business profile. Sorry. You have to do the approval of the agenda then. That was all included. Okay. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in general nature thereof? Seeing none. Business profile, B&D Stanley Enterprises.
Moved by Counselor Hermer, seconded by Counselor Hudel. Be it resolved, the council receives for information the business profile of B&D Enterprises provided by Derek Lancaster, member of the Economic Development Task Force.
Comments? Deputy Mayor.
Nothing particular, simply that we hope to have a profile at every subsequent meeting every 3 weeks.
Anything else? In favor of the motion, of the resolution? Carried. Now comes the best part of the program. Barb Sproul is with us today. She has provided so much in the way of service, guidance to myself, to members of the council, to the council, or sorry, township staff, as well to the people of the township of North Frontenac. And it's time that we had a little retirement ceremony and thanked her properly for her great service and guidance.
We also have a card and flowers from the township staff and council, which I will present now. I hope you have some help holding some of these things, Mark. I moved here in 1972 and have encouraged that and I agree to allow very strict go.
Yep, go ahead, Joe.
I've known you since I've been working for Connex in 2009. And you've been very supportive of good planning. Your part's always been in the right place to kind of help people. I'm sitting earlier, I was looking at ordinance of from that county council last year that was in 1997, last meeting in December 1997. And there were two people there that I knew. One was current ward president, and the other person was Councilor Barbs. So you've been doing a lot for a long, long time. So we have some fresh tulips here for you from Maple Ridge Farm that were picked last night. They're in water, that's cool water. And this is the card signed by the warden with that county seal on it. Thanks, and with the best wishes. Thank you very much.
I'm just wondering, Joe, how you transported that from Kingston.
Jenny,
It was over.
Jenny. She made me drive the right speed.
So we have a cake, so we give the first piece to Barb and everybody get a piece and enjoy and give you have an opportunity to thank her. She deserved every bit of it. Pardon? Oh, yeah. Very done that. She's ahead of me. We're going to move a few items ahead of her, her presentation. So the next item up will be, we're going to skip 6B for a few minutes. We have no delegations, and we're going to do item 8A, the adoption of the minutes.
Moved by Counselor Hermer, seconded by Counselor Hudol. Be it resolved, the council adopts the minutes as circulated of the following meetings. 1, a regular meeting of council held April 5th, 2024, and 2, a special meeting of council held April 12th, 2024.
Are there any comments? In favor? Motion is carried. There's business arising out of the minutes. 9A.
Moved by Counselor Hudol, seconded by Counselor Hermer. Whereas at a previous meeting, council requested Mayor Lichty contact Addington Highlands Reeve Henry Hogue to discuss a potential joint council meeting. And whereas at their meeting on April 16th, 2024, Addington Highlands Council passed Resolution 155, 2024, approving a list of items for consideration at a joint council meeting. Therefore, be it resolved that council instructs the clerk to contact the CAO at Addington Highlands to determine a location and potential dates for the meeting, and that council would like the following items to be included in the joint council agenda.
Okay. Under the comment section, what are the what would be the items we think we should discuss with this, with the Addington Highlands Council?
We talked about it before, we should be looking at maybe, we're getting behind on our budget, on our dollars for, in reserves for the joint fire board, Keldarberry. We should be discussing that at the joint meeting as well.
Stephanie?
Not right this second. I might though. If we could just continue on.
Counselor Hermer,
I'd like the discussion and the reasoning for not supporting our resolution for doctor
Dr. Recruitment,
recruitment reimbursement.
okay. Little? And you,
Well, let's make this an interesting meeting and let's talk about the joint fire department in a whole between the two communities.
Deputy Mayor?
I wonder, since you've mentioned it in the past, if we might want to talk about their attitude towards possible renewable energy projects in the future. If we're in alignment or not. Also, I think the structure of a meeting like this might be better if it was set up as a committee of the whole type meeting where there is an opportunity for freer discussion.
Anyone else? Going.
So we're in agreement what they've proposed.
They have proposed waste site shared between municipalities, the doctor incentive program, economic development initiatives, status update on the ER and cell gap, affordable housing, maintenance agreement for roads, the Blue Box program, hazardous waste and shared services bylaw enforcement. Deputy Mayor,
I gotta suggest we pick 5 and have a second meeting. We'll never get through all this.
agreed. Roy?
I was just wondering, appropriate staff will be at this meeting also, correct?
The structure hasn't even been thought of yet and so on. Corey?
I did watch the Addington Highlands Council meeting, and that seems to be their intent, so us as well will be certainly.
Well, I'm kind of in agreement with the deputy mayor, like we'll never get through all this. Oh, some of them could be short, but 2 or 3 hours can go by pretty quick. So maybe we pick 5 or 6, but if we generate a list and we say to Addington Highlands, we want to discuss a maximum of 6. And see what they say. What are your favorite 6?
Yeah, I don't think we should put a limit on how many we would discuss, but maybe put a time limit on it. And then and discuss having another meeting if we don't get them all done. So just not limit how many we do.
That works for me too.
Mr. Mayor, City of Toronto goes 48 hours sometimes for council meetings.
And that's one of the reasons we don't live in the city of Toronto anymore. Okay. Anybody else? Fred, do you have an opinion?
I think everybody covered a lot of the subjects I was thinking.
Do we want to talk? Yes, we do. Mandatory septic testing. Mandatory septic.
So we could, I have no problem doing that, but then you might also want to talk about Airbnbs because it was brought up there too. Maybe at the bottom of like some of the other stuff I think should come first.
Term rentals. Yeah. Okay. Last call. Okay,
I'm just going to read these back just to make sure that I've got the wording correct. And that council would like the following items to be included in the joint council agenda. Keldarberry Fire Department budget and role within the townships. Resolution of North Frontenac Council regarding doctor recruitment. renewable energy policies, mandatory septic testing, and short-term accommodations.
Sorry, did that include your item, Roy? Okay, is that how you'd like it worded, though?
Yeah, I think let's leave it open-ended and we'll see where the conversation takes us.
Wayne?
Yeah, sorry for the, we talked about this before about having Chief Cuddy come to our council meetings, at some of them for anything that's on, especially the budget. And that to explain anything that this council would want, so maybe we could discuss that with Agnew Islands if we,
Okay, so we could add council or staff representation at council meetings?
yeah.
Okay. Okay, does anybody want the resolution read again? Okay. All in favor of the resolution as amended? Carried. Okay. Item 10A, communications section A.
Moved by Councillor Hermer, seconded by Councillor Hudol. Be it resolved that council receives for information section A, items of the clerk's administrative report entitled Communications of Interest.
Are there any comments? In favor of the resolution? Carried. 10B, B1. Kindness Garden Proposal, Berry Hall.
Moved by Councillor Hermer, seconded by Councillor Fowler. Be it resolved that council receives for information an email dated April 3rd, 2024 from Terry Wood requesting permission to install a kindness garden at the Berry Community Hall, and that council supports this request, and that council instructs the manager of community development to work with Ms. Wood to determine an appropriate location for the kindness garden, and that the treasurer is instructed to add Terry Wood to the volunteer insurance list.
Comments? Councillor Fowler.
We have a butterfly garden at the Snow Road Hall, and it's turned out quite nice.
It is. Okay, any comments? Any more comments? In favor of the resolution? Carried. Coin Recreation Club, Meet the Machine 2024 event.
Moved by Councillor Fowler, seconded by Councillor Hermer. Be it resolved that council receives the information, a letter from Terry Wood, Cloyne Rec Club, requesting the township's participation in the Meet the Machine event to be held June 1st, 2024, from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the Cloyne Community Hall and the North Addington Education Center, and that council approves the township's participation, provided staff are available from the Public Works Department and/or North Frontenac Fire Department to participate in the event.
We have any comments? Councillor Regent.
Just wondering about the insurance for this event as well. Is it the same as the other one? Whose insurance covers this event?
I believe it would be we have insurance at our community halls, so that would cover that event. It's at the hall, correct? So they would be covered under our insurance for that.
It's kind of morphs down toward the school though too. It's not just on the hall parking lot.
So again, I can only comment on the stuff that takes place on township property. As far as any of that event that's not within township property, that would be up to them to figure it out. Again, I can't comment on that.
We are just a participant in it anyway. We're supplying the vehicles and some staff, so. And we cover our own staff, but we're not sponsoring the event. So it's. Okay, any further discussion? In favor? Carried. Malcolm and Ardoch Lakes Landowners Association, Malham, request permission to clean up the Malcolm Lake boat launch.
Moved by Counselor Fowler, seconded by Counselor Hermer. Be it resolved that council receives for information a letter, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Moved by Counselor Hermer, seconded by Counselor Fowler. Be it resolved that council receives for information an email dated April 15th, 2024 from Ron Higgins on behalf of the Malcolm Ardock Landowner Lake Association, MALA, requesting permission to clean up the overgrowth at the Malcolm Lake Boat Launch and remove any beaver branches at the culvert, and that council is supportive of this request and instructs the manager of community development to work with MALA volunteers to determine a date for the cleanup and to ensure appropriate safety certification and PPE are available if using chainsaws, power equipment, etc. And that council instructs the treasurer to add the volunteers to the volunteer insurance list.
Comments? Deputy Mayor.
Darwin, is there any problem with the waste going to Plevna?
Mr. Mayor, through you, no, there isn't any problem with it. It'll be brush will go to brush pile and if there's waste in the waste pile. Darwin, there's no charge for them to bring the brush there, is there? No, there wouldn't be. I mean, you can agree to accept it free of charge.
That be added? Okay. All right. In favor of the resolution? Carried. Okay. All right, so our presenter is supposed to be here at 10 o'clock. I'd like to go ahead with item 10 or 11G. Okay. And that is the where do we go, Jim? Public Works Manager, Claremont Community Volunteers request to collect returnables.
Moved by Counselor Regent, seconded by Counselor Good. Be it resolved that council receives for information the Public Works Manager's Administrative Report entitled Claremont Community Volunteers Request to Collect Returnables, and that council will consider a bylaw later in the meeting to enter into a license agreement, including insurance requirements with the Claremont Community Volunteers to provide a returnables program at the Ampa and Mississippi waste sites.
Comments? Counselor Fowler.
Yeah, didn't we discuss this regarding another group not too long ago?
It was just in passing, and it was the same group. Where there was no resolution, it was just comments. Okay, did anybody else have comments? Roy?
So I guess the real question here is the Plevna site. I know that the CMVC would like to set up a booth at the Plevna site. We know that the Lions Club is already there. I think this is a volunteer group in the community that could benefit having those bottles there. Just to give you an example, insurance for this community volunteer group is $1,400. That's a lot of money to raise before they can even do anything. You know, they're doing a lot of good things in the area. And what I would like to see is that each waste site can be considered by the volunteer group in that area. I know that the Lions Club does a lot of good work. I'm not saying they don't, they obviously do, but this volunteer group strictly looks at this area as a whole. And I think we should take that into consideration. And it's not in the resolution here. If we are to allow them to go to the Plevna site. So that should be added in there, I believe. Vern?
Well, I agree with what Roy said. Like these volunteers, they're important to the development and the welfare of the community. And I think charity should begin at home first before we worry about outside agencies. Now, I'm not saying that the Lions Club doesn't do a lot for us, but we do contribute to them in other manners as well.
Good.
Like it was said earlier, this wasn't on the agenda. We were open discussion on it. And it's not on the agenda. We shouldn't be discussing it, but I do believe that the Lions has had these sites for numerous years. This is a new organization, is just trying to get in on it. And the Lions does a lot, and not just for the other end of the township, my end. They do it for everybody, and it's, goes into the food banks and whatever. So I think it should stay the same, and I don't think we should even be discussing at this meeting besides.
Counselor Hoodle?
So it's not on the agenda and it should have been on the agenda. So I'm not sure why it's not on the agenda because an email was sent to the township asking about the Plevna site. And so I'm hoping that's just a typo of some kind. And yes, the Lions Club does do a lot of work. We also give the Lions Club a lot of money. And when I looked at the budget, and maybe Kelly can correct me if I'm wrong, but I tallied up about $2,800 that we give the Lions Club, $2,000 for a food bank alone, if that's not correct. We have another food bank in Sharper Lake that people in North Frontenac use. And I know for a fact that the CMDC would like to donate money there also. This month, they're donating money to the school, which we all agree that is important here, because it's a small school and a very sort of special type of school that we need to support. And we don't give any money to the food bank at Sharper Lake, and they're willing to do that. So I like what Councillor Hermer said, charity begins at home. Again, I'm not saying the Lions Club doesn't do a good job. They do a great job, but we also fund them with a lot of money.
Deputy Mayor?
2 cents worth. I think it would be a mistake to put a Claremille donation site beside a Lions Club donation site at Plevna. I don't think it would be right to put 2 of them. You choose one or the other. And we haven't had that discussion yet. I would be in favor of, for now, approving this request as written for 2 sites, Ampa and Mississippi, for now. It would just create conflict immediately if you put 2 collection sites for 2 different volunteer organizations at Plevna.
I'm going to say, Fred, you got something you want to say?
Yeah, I think this should be discussed, both of them together, and we should defer this one to another day.
Okay, I'd like to defer it. Here's the reason why. We're talking about getting in, or like possibly replacing the Lions Club collection at the Plevna site for the Claremille volunteers. But at the same time, we're looking at taking over what's in Ampa and what's in Snow Road. So I would like staff to contact those 2 organizations, see if they are ever interested in doing it at those sites. And if they are, we have a different equation. If they are not, then I feel a lot more comfortable approving this. Secondly, this is a new group. And as a new group, and I'm not saying you are, I'm just saying that it could be something that it's new, let's get on it. But long-term, it's a little different thing. Like, are we going to keep doing this? So I'd like to say maybe do it as a pilot project for a couple of years. If Snow Road, Mississippi Station and Ampa say, we don't want this, but those dumps are clear, we can give those dumps to this group. And after a couple of years, we can look at Plevna and say, okay, Councillor Good, then Councillor Regent.
I wasn't aware that, who's just doing this?
Hang on.
Someone got their mic on.
Okay, I wasn't aware that there was already people, organizations taking it from Mississippi and Ampa. They're not? Okay.
Is it? But they should be
Then-
given the opportunity rather than have someone move in and have the exact same situation we have like down the road 3 years from now. The association groups, volunteers, they're both well-staffed with volunteers. They're great organizations. Let's give them an opportunity to say yes or no.
I'd rather, this organization here has already asked for it. The other ones haven't come forward and asked anything to do with it, and haven't for years. We got people here that want to collect. Why not let it go now?
Why? Oh, Stephanie, sorry.
So why could we not just put the 2, like their bin next to, correct? So, sorry, so why could we not put the volunteers bin next to the Lions Club? I mean, if I was there with a bag of, of whatever, which is never gonna happen, but if I was, I'd put half in one and half in the other. I'm not gonna discriminate between who gets my reusables or recyclables or whatever. Like, why wouldn't we just help both groups?
Little,
So that's an option, Councillor Regent. I think it's a good option. But it's a possibility. As far as the other two wave sites, I believe they knew about this and they didn't want to participate. So I agree with Councillor Good. I don't think we should defer the Ompa waste site and the other waste site for another. They're ready to set up. They have their insurance ready to go. They have the approval from Darwin. He's recommending it. If we're still debating about Plevna site, that end can be deferred. We can put it on the agenda and have a proper discussion.
Darwin, do you have a comment?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you, if I could just hopefully clarify some of this. Council did discuss granting the Plevna Group permission for Plevna and, or for Ompa and Mississippi back in November, and there was a resolution approving that. So the purpose of this report was that resolution said we'd bring forward a bylaw at a future meeting. So the purpose of this report was to bring that item forward and table the required bylaw to do that. And as Councillor Udall was mentioning, I think, the Plevna Group, based on that previous approval, have obtained the required insurance and proceeded based on that approval. So that's the one item, and as it stands, council has approved them having those two sites. As far as Plevna, I did receive an email requesting Plevna. I've referenced, I didn't include the email, but I referenced that in my admin report. And I gave my recommendation that I recommended continuing with the Lions Club because they took it on and they're set up and it's functioning, but it's obviously council's decision. I wouldn't recommend two bins for two different groups. Like there's effort and travel and everything involved in coming in to pick up, and it has to be worthwhile. I wouldn't want to see either group, show and not, receive enough returnables to make it worth their while. So the other issue would be room at the site and setting it up, and we could do that, but I wouldn't recommend two different groups at the one site.
Thank you for that. I completely forgotten, and that was in the report. I obviously didn't register. Councillor Fowler.
I'm just wondering how much money these collectibles generate, whether it's worth it. Just like to hear from somebody to give me that information.
So there's talk of, the Plevna site is approximately about $2,000 a year. Pays for the insurance.
So on the table right now is the Snow Road and Ompa dump sites, Mississippi Station and Ompa sites. That's what we're discussing. Okay, and the others, whether or not we eventually approve this volunteer group taking over the Plevna site, that's discussion for another date or another resolution. So with regard to the resolution as it stands, or as it's presented, I get to close comments. Are we in favor of the resolution or not? In favor? Yes. That resolution is carried. Congratulations. I hope it's not to be careful what you get asked for, right? Go ahead, Roy.
I just want to comment this group, and not because my wife is sitting there, they're an excellent volunteer group. There's bingo every second Tuesday with excellent pastries made by someone who's very special here. They're having a strawberry social in July, so everyone's invited there.
Yeah, really great bingo callers too.
They have a really good bingo caller.
Sorry, Lonnie couldn't make it the other day, though. Okay, so where are we now? We're at 11A. So item 11A. Okay, all right, so we can go ahead with the presentation. We'll get back to where we're supposed to be. That's fine, okay. Good morning, Lisa. Can you hear us?
Good morning, everyone. How are you?
We're great and we're looking forward to hearing what you have to tell us.
Excellent. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, the floor is yours.
I think you have to permit me to turn my video on. It says the host has stopped it. So as soon as the host permits me to have a video and screen sharing, I can get it on. But it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you, everyone. Until that comes on, I do want to thank John who created this opportunity. I had given a fairly detailed presentation in December to a local not-for-profit group with a lot of people across Southeastern Ontario that are interested in what's going on in the electricity sector. And then John had said that your council may be interested in this same presentation. So that is what led to this. There's more here than you need, but rather than delete it, I think I'll just go quickly through it, skip over some things. You'll have the materials if you do want to look back on it or if you have any questions for me. There's still the host blocking it.
Share screen now?
Let me try again now. The video's blocked, but there, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so remind me of time parameters, but I was going to try and go through the presentation in 15 minutes and allow time for questions if you'd like.
Works well.
Okay, great. Thanks. So I'm a business law lawyer at Cunningham Swan. Many of you will know Tony and his team in the municipal group. I head up the business law group here with other partners, but I have 17, 18 years experience in the energy sector in Canada, and in particular, renewable energy and the electricity industry. So the wires, CLDCs, and what goes on the generation side. So Ontario's been through a lot since 2010 and the Green Energy Act. So I'm going to talk a bit about what's happened since then. Some of you will remember what happened during them, but I'll talk about what's happened since and just try and be a resource for you because everything's coming to a head again right now. So I want to get everyone oriented in case you do have questions if you're approached in the next few months or next year or two. So I'm going to talk
just before you start.
Yeah.
We're going to try and see if we can get this onto the full screen so people and you have to do it apparently.
Oh, that's great. Okay. Tell me what to do and I will do it if I can help.
So you just need to hit slideshow along
Okay.
the top. The words along the very top, you've got file, home, insert, and go to slideshow.
Stay in screen. You
got file, home, no, over
there.
file, home, insert. Yeah, design. So you go to slideshow. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
And then do from beginning.
Thank you.
That way, then we just get the full screen. That's perfect.
Oh, you're
Thank
so
you.
good. Okay. Thank you. Wow. Okay. So, yeah, so I'm a business and energy law lawyer. So you as things heat up, you may want municipal lawyers involved too, but I'm going to tell you what's going on from an industry perspective. So you'll be most interested, I think, in kind of the political context and investment environment right now in Ontario. You know, there was an election that meant change in 2018 when the Ford government was elected. The Green Energy Act was appealed. You probably recall that being notorious amongst municipalities because it had eliminated a lot of planning act, land use planning controls over renewable energy projects during the FIT program. So that all ended. The FIT program had pretty much wrapped up by now. Then a lot of stuff had been built and the economics were starting to change, and they were in the midst of something called LRP2, which was competitive procurement. It was actually a great program, but it was canceled mid-progress. Okay, so we never, in mid-process, we never saw the results of that. It would have been a price determination competitive process at that time, but those never got built. So there were a lot of stranded projects under that. Some contracts were terminated by the new government due to the political climate at that time of whether people believe they were on Ontario was currently on the right course of action or not. So what's happened in the intervening years? Since then, I'm just going to give you a bit of a reality check because you may be wondering why things have been so quiet. So we have seen some BTM is behind the meter. So that's just on someone's site, not out there in the grid, but just maybe at someone's home or business. Some behind the meter, some small solar installations, cottages, small business, some homes, whatever. There's been a few. Net metering has improved. The economics of net metering have improved, and people now get the 12-month carry forward and get time of use pricing. So you see some more net metering projects going on where people can put solar panels on their home or business and get a credit on their bill for the power that they generate and deliver. So that's relatively positive. There's still some room for improvement, but there has been uptake of that. Virtual net metering is now permitted in Ontario. I can talk about that separately if anyone's ever interested. But interconnection costs, especially in Hydro One territory, remain a big problem. It's very expensive. It's cost prohibitive for most people. There have been behind the meter battery installations. So if you look around at all the big factories in Ontario, any big load customers, so customers that use a lot of electricity, pretty much all the universities and college campuses, they actually have big batteries installed on their site now. They look a lot like a container, like a ship container or a transport container, and there's a battery in them, and they were using those to store and kind of manipulate when they're drawing power from the grid, because those big load customers are hit so hard with time of use pricing that it actually became economic to load shift a bit using batteries. So like we've been involved in, $200 or $300 million of batteries that have been quietly dropped in across the province over the past 5 or 6 years. They're everywhere, whether people know it or not. They're using it to avoid this peak pricing under the global adjustment. So what's been going on at a ministry level, there has not been an integrated resource plan in Ontario this whole time. That's concerning. Okay, we haven't done a lot of supply mix system planning for electricity because this government was elected on promises, as many of you know, to not touch some of this stuff with a 10-foot pole. So it's been very difficult. I have empathy all around for them, the system planners, and the political climate. So there's been no new wind, basically no new solar, no new open procurement for anything really, and anyone working in the industry went and worked in other jurisdictions. Most of your colleges, skilled trades, energy systems people, operators, anyone that was doing installation or working for the construction companies that were doing projects all left or didn't have jobs, or they've gone to other industries. I see that on the front lines out at St. Lawrence College and talking to young people. That is sad for our region because there were a lot of good jobs in Eastern Ontario when those were getting built. There's been no new renewable energy capital invested in Ontario at all, basically during this period. And there's been some transactions like mergers and acquisitions of existing portfolios of assets, but that doesn't really impact any of us. That's just all the lenders in New York and in Toronto. So there's been a lot of adversarial messaging, as you know, and it's created an unwelcome investment climate. I'm from a farm. I'm a rural person. I work for farmers and landowners mostly across Canada, and many of you know our farm. Part of this that is heartbreaking for me is the positive stories have never been told. And I know a lot of positive stories of landowners whose lives were changed for the better for these projects. Those were never told. So what's been happening? Do we even want renewable energy in our supply mix in Ontario? I just want you to understand one thing. I know I'm going fast here, but you're going to hear a lot about this these days in the news and then in the media. they're procuring capacity and energy, it's important to understand the difference. So when we talk about the electricity sector, you probably hear things like some things are variable, some things are intermittent. That means they're not, just because they're dispatched doesn't mean they can deliver. Okay. What the system needs first and foremost right now for reliability is capacity. They need assets that are available when called on. They can be dispatched when called on. So they need that capacity built in the system even when we're not using it. So for example, that is, there's a big baseload amount of capacity in Ontario with the nuclear facilities, but those are always running. There is quite a bit of capacity in Ontario with the gas plants. They may or may not be running. There's a lot of capacity with hydroelectric, and they can control that a bit as well. But capacity alone, having it all on standby, is first of all very expensive, and you're vulnerable to overbuilding your system. And at the end of the day, what do people want? They want electrons when they plug things in. So at the end of the day, all people really think about is the energy, how much energy is actually being delivered into the grid at any given point in time. And there's ways to have energy contribute to the grid that aren't the same as capacity. Like, for example, wind may be better at certain times of the day than solar, so they complement each other. And you can have all the solar come online in the afternoon peak, and then the wind take up other parts, and you still get your energy without it necessarily always having to be counted towards the capacity. This is a whole other topic if anyone wants to talk about it. There's lots written about it, but it is important to understand the difference, because when they issue a procurement right now, they just procured capacity over the past year and a half in that expedited LT1 procurement. And that was mostly batteries, because they just want stuff on the grid to have it there if needed, to store energy and release it when needed. And they're building more gas plants. But energy is more open to many different things, basically anything that can generate electricity, and they're going to be procuring that next. The ISO was asked by the government to prepare a Pathways to Decarbonization report, which came out about just over a year ago, about a year and a half ago now. And this is a big deal in Ontario. It's the first time they tackled the issue. They asked them to look at scenarios of a gas moratorium, phasing out gas, or getting down to net zero emissions. The ISO reported back that a moratorium is actually not even feasible in Ontario. So no matter what anyone says, they cannot do it. The ISOs assist the grid operator. Not possible. Okay, so gas is actually needed short-term and mid-term in Ontario. So instead, they looked at a pathway. What that revealed is not only can they not ratchet down or eliminate gas, but we actually need more gas. So this is where you see the provinces and the feds butting heads. It's in the newspaper every day right now across the country. Certain provinces actually need the existing gas fleet and maybe more, at the same time that the federal government is telling them those gas plants need to no new ones need to be built, and existing ones need to come offline in certain time periods, depending on who you want to listen to. I'm trying not to be political, but this is the heart of the matter right now, in the tension between the provinces and the federal government, because the provinces have this jurisdiction. There's some data here on how much those gas plants need to run. What's 2050 going to look like, and how are we going to get there in Ontario? Well, your takeaway from this needs to be that by all estimates, we need a lot more electricity, a lot more capacity and energy, probably at least 3 times higher than today. Even since I put together this presentation, I've read all the reports. In the last few months, I am hearing even higher projections almost by the week, by the month, as more AI centers and whatnot are part of projections in our province and all over North America. We need a lot more supply. Okay, and that Pathways report assumed an annual growth rate in Ontario of 2.7%. That's a big number. And conservation efficiency is not really going to put a big dent in that. This is remarkable in Ontario. I've been at this for 17 or 18 years in this industry. I've never seen anything like this. Ontario's always been a summer peaking province. Everyone in the GTA goes home at in the afternoon, or now has a program. They turn on the air conditioner, massive summer peak. Our system was always built for that. Summer peak will keep going up, but now we're going to be a dual peaking province. And by the time we get out to the end of the forecast period, they're saying we turn into a winter peaking province. We've never been that before. That is where you're seeing all more heating go electric, and where you're seeing more transportation, vehicle charging, whatnot go electric. So that's a big number for winter in Ontario as things are forecast right now. That Pathways report said that right now our system capacity is about 42,000 megawatts. That's what we have built and what taxpayers have paid for. That's on the rate base. All these things are forecast to be needed, and we need an 88,000 megawatt system for electrification that's forecast in the future. And again, I actually think this may be low now compared to information that's come out since then. That's a $400 billion price tag in Ontario. The magnitude of the infrastructure and generation that needs to be built is literally like part of an economic transformation, and that will take time. It'll take over 20 years, but this stuff takes time to plan and build, which is why it's all some of these decisions are coming up now and soon. So the magnitude is huge. So the ISO's trying to help the government here with, well, we don't have all the answers or all the plans yet, and everything remains highly political. What can we do as initial, what they're calling no regret actions? So accelerate efforts to acquire non-emitting supply. So that's renewables, hydroelectric, and nuclear. Conservation demand management. Get started on environmental assessments for bigger stuff. Transmission infrastructure is a big problem in Ontario. We need a lot more. Those timelines are very long. And then you see some other things. This is what they assumed in that report. I'll let you read that if you're interested. And there's some data here on some assumptions that they made about the supply mix out to 2050. One takeaway I just would encourage everyone to think about is everything in the supply mix has pros and cons, right? Nuclear is not dispatchable. It's great, big base load. It's expensive and risky over budget over time to build, but it is tremendous non-emitting base load. So regardless of what your views are on nuclear, that is its attribute in the Ontario supply mix, and we need it right now. And they're basically all in on hundreds of billions of more nuclear. You see that every day and what we see behind the scenes in Toronto. Hydroelectric's excellent. It's cheap and old in Ontario, and it's dispatchable and it's clean. So that's great. But the simple reality is you're not going to get new big dams built anywhere, in my opinion, ever again, due to environmental and Indigenous considerations and the amount of land it would take up. So you might get run of the river hydroelectric built here and there, but that's hard on lakes and rivers where there's cottages and private property. Solar and wind are relatively low cost and fast, so they're going to be needed very quickly to get procured. They're scalable and modular, but the challenge there is they're not always dispatchable when needed. So there's a lot of there's mixed opinions out there on how much you need to kind of rely on the gas plants behind the scenes, or as some people frame it, to be duplicative to be able to count that when needed. That's, again, a whole other topic. So an annual planning outlook just came out. I had presented on the former one last year, and we just got a new one out late March. So this is good stuff. Everybody was waiting on it. Now the ISO is saying this just does planning. By the way, this is just system planning from the system planner. They're trying desperately to be politically agnostic and neutral. It does not speculate on supply mix. So it does not pick winners and losers of what it's going to be. It does not pick nuclear, wind, solar, hydro, gas. It doesn't. It just says what the system needs. in Ontario, the way our regime is set up, our government actually picks the supply mix, which is why it's so political and problematic. That is not the case in most other jurisdictions in North America. So you start to see the problem. In most other jurisdictions in North America, the system planner picks the supply mix of what generation technologies are going to be put out to tender, procured, and put on the grid, public or private. Ontario is different. So this planning outlook from the ISO is saying they're now projecting about 2% annual growth. Ontario's actually has quite a bit of economic tailwinds right now. You're probably seeing the announcements in the paper every day of, like, you know, factories and stuff coming here, logistics, distribution centers, lots of big load. Okay, population growth, cities are growing. So, you know, a lot of this, you see the economic development, we see it here in Kingston. The rural areas don't have the biggest population gain that the cities do, but there's just so many numbers driving this demand and growth, especially around the GTA in southwestern Ontario. So those are high numbers for growth. This is what our supply mix looks like right now. Okay, so you see it's 30 to 40% nuclear at any given point in time, depending on, this is installed capacity. Yeah. And so they've done some future case-based planning. Like if you just look at all the existing contracts, you start seeing contracts coming off over the planning period. So this is this white triangle here. They're going to have to contract some new power to be able to fill this gap of stuff that's coming off. And then this is, the gap starts to close a bit if they recontract some of the facilities. Recontracting is kind of the code word right now for extensions or renewals. So I think they pretty much have to recontract all the wind that's operating right now. Some of those early contracts are coming off in the next 3 to 5 years. They need them to keep running. I don't know how there's any doubt about that. And this is what happens if they contract a whole bunch more nuclear. So they have to get going on those right now. They have huge lead times. They take decades. So they have to contract a lot more nuclear, but you still see a big gap here in what they need. So in all scenarios, you can read the whole report if you want. I'm going, you know, much too fast to give it justice, but you start seeing here's what they would have in the summer for capacity. Here's what they have in the winter for capacity. It's not enough. There's shortfalls beginning now and soon. Okay. So again, there's a lot more charts and data on this. They don't want this to be front page news, but it is a stressful time at the system operator, and I don't envy the ministry and politicians that have to make decisions on what we're procuring, which is all underway right now, by the day, by the hour in Toronto. There are shortfalls right now. These are just like your nukes that are either coming off end of life or need some refurbishment. So those are big. Those are big amounts of capacity and energy that need to be offline. And you see that it's going to take time for fuel sources to ramp back up, right? Even when we're recontracting. Here's a nuclear schedule if anyone wants to look at that and see. But when we go through all the reports, the takeaway is that in 2024, 2025, 2026, the system is very stressed, and they're doing everything they can to get new resources online as fast as possible and keep those gas plants running. They're doing some turbine refurbishment at gas plants to try and generate more or expand their capacity. There is batteries coming online so they can store and release power at peak periods. And they'll actually they'll work with the existing assets to try and make sure that planned and unplanned downtime doesn't coincide with too much of the nuclear refurbishment downtime, so that hopefully we don't have brownouts and blackouts. Short term, when I wrote this presentation in December, I just asked the questions like, do we have resource adequacy in Ontario? Sure. My answers were no on all of these when we did the presentation in December, but they have been able to procure a bit more in the past year. So the situation is a bit better. So I'm not going to say no anymore, but I'll say short-term system adequacy, like are the lights going to stay on? Well, that's dependent right now on gas for the next couple summers, and they got to get recontracting on some of the wind and existing assets. Medium term, it's still very tight, very stressed, still dependent on gas. This is where you see them asking the feds to back off because we need the gas. Long term, no. Even though we're all in on nuclear, and you can read the Powering Ontario report that came out last summer, we are all in on nuclear, and it is still not enough. So electricity generation resources and storage resources are going to continue to get procured everywhere, in my opinion. And if you would like to host any or be part of this or receive any economic development because of it, I would encourage you to think that way. It's a choice that every municipality in Ontario will get to make. And you may say you're not interested in hosting these kind of things, or you may say you are, or you're interested in assessing the economic development and why you would want to. But the reason I'm showing you all this is they're going to go somewhere. And every municipality, if you haven't been approached already, you probably will be, especially if you're in areas where there is transmission capacity, because a lot of places there is not transmission capacity to connect projects. If you can find appropriate and suitable sites, there's a lot of money available and benefits to be spread around. It's partly what I do, what Tony does, and what others here and in other pockets of Ontario do, is help the landowners, help the farmers, help the municipalities negotiate benefits for them if projects are being proposed. Right now, I know I skipped over some of these, but I don't want to take up all your time. You're welcome to, if anyone has questions, we could come back to it later. The critical path challenges right now in Ontario are all these political considerations. Literally, there's meetings almost every day right now on how do we navigate where to put projects with deference to municipalities, appropriate sites, protecting agricultural food production, land use, and of course, the economics, like the rate impacts of all this new procurement. This is what the ISO is dealing with. I'm very involved in a lot of these meetings. This is just an interesting graph so you can see when wind contributes the most. It actually doesn't have as high capacity in the summer. Solar does, so you start to see how they complement each other a bit. This was the plan I was mentioning that looking at it last summer, it was should have been called the all in on nuclear plan, maybe, but they're going to need it. So you see, this is a summary of what's in there. They want to play up the clean energy advantage. The big factories and load customers all want non-emitting power. It's a massive issue all over the world right now. Big sophisticated companies have ESG targets. Their boards, their shareholders have ESG targets. So if you're a big factory coming anywhere to set up shop, you're looking for clean energy. That's why they're going to jurisdictions like Quebec and in the States where they have clean energy. It is critical to Ontario's future, no matter what we want or think as ratepayers, that we have a clean electricity supply mix on offer that's not emitting and getting the gas plants offline in the next decade or two, or as soon as we can, because the big job creators are demanding that. And that's happening all over Asia, Europe, and North America, and the US already has a head start. So here's where we are and what they're actually doing right now. So these are these RFPs. You probably heard about them. Lots of people have been talking about them. That expedited long-term procurement, that closed early 2023. And then they had the long-term procurement that's called LT1. That just closed in December. That was all the activity last year. If you heard stuff coming to council meetings, some projects were welcomed with open arms. Others were controversial. Some councils couldn't even have their meetings. There were so many people coming. I heard all kinds of stories across Eastern Ontario. I'm interested in your perspective, but that's closed now. So those bids are all in, and the government they'll be deciding those on June 30th, who won what projects won contracts. Right now, we're in LT2. It's being designed right now. There's meetings literally every day with a bunch of ministries on the ISO in Toronto. I'm on some of the webinars. They haven't opened it yet because they're still trying to figure out the design of the contracts and all these municipal and land support resolution and land siting issues. Maybe some of you are involved in those. Lots under discussion. I was debating presenting to you today, but honestly, it's changing almost by the week, what they have in mind for LT2. So they'll finalize the design sometime in the next few months here, probably by the end of the summer, and I think they'll open it in the fall. If it runs behind, they might open it in the winter, open that for the bids to start going. And I think the bids will have to probably go in early 2025 for LT2 projects. That is going to be, I think, mostly solar, wind, and there'll be other technologies as well, but that's energy. They need the energy and they need it built fast, and nothing else can get built faster. The issue is, where are you going to put it? Because transmission's a big problem. Ironically, from what I've seen, Eastern Ontario has more transmission. There's no transmission around the GTA or Southwestern Ontario. We have more transmission, so we have an advantage here if we want to attract projects. And they're looking at up north, but the grid is thin and weak up north. So there's you can't put very big projects up there, hardly anywhere. And then LT3 will be on its heels. This has already been announced, and LT4 will be on the heels of that. They just need to keep rolling these out as soon as possible, every year or two. So that's it. That's a bit about the procurements that are happening. We're in this one right now. I guess I just kind of described that. I should have had this slide up. And I will thank you for your time. Our energy future in our area is important to us. It's important to me. I talk to business owners every day, landowners every day. People see it. They have a lot of questions about what it means for them. And you are in a position where you will have opportunities that you can explore, or you can take a pass on. But there's a lot to navigate, because the electricity system is in major transformation, and that is going to go on for at least 20 to 30 years by every prediction, every report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. That's a pretty dense presentation. I got most of it. I hope others got some of it. My incentive for inviting you to speak to us was not to create a doomsday scenario about supply necessarily, but just to try to introduce this council to opportunities that might come up in the shorter, longer term for us. We have a major transmission corridor running right through our township. My initial idea was that if this community and this council could be persuaded, for example, that battery storage was a very, very low risk possibility, that would take some education. It would take a lot of education if that is in fact the case. And so this might be a first step in that kind of education. I suspect there are big employment and financial opportunities for this township if we were to bring in something like battery storage. We have previously rejected wind power here for various reasons. Maybe it's time for us to look again at new proposals from different companies at different scales with different agreements. But I want to thank you again for introducing us to this. Is an extremely complex subject. We're all highly dependent on reliable energy. You brought up an issue I hadn't realized before, that ISO sets the needs and the province decides how we're going to do it. I didn't know we were unique in that sense. I suspect it may relate to the history of hydro, which started out with Niagara Falls. It was a provincial initiative, I think, back from the 20s. Maybe the system we have now is an outgrowth of that. I don't know, but it certainly affects the way things develop. Thank you
Mhm.
again.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you very much, everyone. And I do agree that would be the food for thought for each of you. If you wanted to be approached, or if you are approached by a developer for a battery installation, or you would make, or maybe a solar farm or a wind farm, you would have an intersection of deciding if that's something you even conceptually want to support. You wouldn't be the host. It takes a private landowner to begin with. But if a private landowner did have a suitable site and it is something that you want to support, what I can tell you is the economic opportunity is very significant. And it can change a lot of things for a small rural municipality. And one of the thoughts that is live discussion right now is rural fire departments. And I'm involved with a lot of people talking about how they can get money, training, equipment, fit up into rural fire departments with the money that a battery project would bring. So I wanted to share that with you, that some municipalities are becoming aware of this. Some know that and some don't know that. And I'm not sure if you know that.
Just before you go, is anybody want to council have a question? Counselor Fowler?
Yes, thank you for your presentation, Lisa. What I see here in your presentation, and in order for all of this to come to be, it's going to cost us a lot of money. The previous Ontario government was pushing green energy and we were going broke. It's just too much money involved to build all these big batteries, transmission lines, nuclear I find makes me nervous because you have to store the hot spent fuel rods and things like that. And I also think that natural gas is probably the best type of energy we have at this time. Sorry that I don't agree with you and some of the other people here at the table, but that's what I feel. I feel we're going to be a lot poorer when this is implemented. Thank you.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. This all comes with a big price tag. That it is daunting number from a ratepayer perspective. There are many questions right now of whether of what makes sense next.
Anyone else? Counselor Hermer?
Well, when you talk about the battery supply as a backup system, we all know that the production of these batteries certainly creates quite a carbon footprint.
Yes. Yep. There's a lot of resources that go into a battery. A lot of resources at a time when the whole world is procuring them, and that doesn't make it cheap. It's a big part of the challenge right now where all these are coming from and how appropriate this is.
Final ask, any more questions? Counselor Hoodle?
I just have one quick question. You talked about importing capacity. Where do we import from?
We have a small tie line with Quebec. I think it's 2,000 megawatts. So it's a little bit helpful, but unfortunately it's not a big answer. We have tie lines into New York State as well. But the challenge is, if you think about it, Hydro One are very smart, sophisticated business people. They don't sell that hydro for cheap when we need it. And when we have a peak and we need it, so does Quebec and so does New York. So it's not
So that's what I was
cheap.
going to comment on.
Yeah.
As our capacity needs goes up, so are theirs. And
Exactly.
when is the day that they stop selling us power?
that depends on the skills of people negotiating those forward contracts. So you'd like to think that we're getting the best price we can negotiating contracts to be able to use that like to max out those tie lines for the next 20, 30, 40 years. So yeah, that's how it works. People have to negotiate contracts. That's a big issue all across Canada. We don't have enough tie lines in Canada between provinces. Yeah, I do want to just leave on a note that I don't mean to advocate for anything one way or another. The reason I wanted to share this with you today is that you deserve to know and understand that these are big issues. They're a lot of money. It's going to happen one way or another. Maybe not the exact megawatts or the exact dollars, but some large amount is going to get spent. It's going to get spent somewhere. It's going to get spent all over the place, quite frankly. So you just deserve to know that if you want to become involved in these conversations.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation, Lisa. We appreciate you giving us the time.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Yep.
Moved by Counselor Hudel, seconded by Counselor Hermer. Be it resolved, the council receives for information a presentation from Lisa Asbrook, partner at Cunningham Swan, entitled Ontario's Renewable Energy Procurement Landscape, and thanks her for her time spent today.
Comments? In favor? Carried. Okay. We're back on the agenda. If I can find out where we're back to 11A.
Moved by Counselor Fowler, seconded by Counselor Hermer. Be it resolved, the council receives for information the clerk planning manager's administrative report entitled Shore Road Allowance Closure and Sale Bylaw, Tyrell, Zale, and that as required by bylaw 2023, all that part of the Shore Road Allowance lying in front of lot 258, registered plan number 1044, geographic township of Barrie, Township of North Frontenac, County of Frontenac being Part 1 on registered plan 13R 23114, Kashwakmak Lake. All those parts of the shoreline road allowance around Big Gull Lake lying in front of Lot 4 and Block A, registered plan number 1622, geographic township of Barrie, Township of North Frontenac, County of Frontenac being parts 1 and 2 on registered plan 13R 22648, Big Gull Lake, be declared as surplus and sold to the adjoining owner. Appraisal of the properties are not necessary as these are shore road allowances. And that council will consider a bylaw later in the meeting to stop up, close, and sell a portion of the shore road allowance.
Comments? In favor of the resolution? The resolution's carried. Item 11B, Shore Road Allowance Application for Approval in Principle, Loader.
Moved by Counselor Hermer, seconded by Counselor Fowler. Be it resolved that council receives for information the clerk planning manager's administrative report entitled Shore Road Allowance Application for Approval in Principle, Loader, and that council approves in principle the application to close, stop up, and sell the shore road allowance as described below. Part of the shore road allowance lying adjacent to part lot 19, concession 6, geographic township of Barrie, Kashwakmak Lake.
Any comments? In favor of the resolution? Resolution's carried. Item 11C, 2182 Myers Cave Road, Johnson and all, concession road allowance proposal for a land exchange and update.
Moved by Counselor Fowler, seconded by Counselor Hermer. Be it resolved that council receives for information the clerk planning manager's administrative report entitled 2182 Myers Cave Road, proposed land exchange, and that council is agreeable to the land exchange, provided all expenses are covered by the property owners, including surveying and legal fees, and that prior to the survey being registered, the location of the land to be transferred be reviewed by the Public Works Manager to ensure the location is suitable for access from Myers Cave Road to the water.
Comments? Deputy Mayor.
I'll just simply say that after reading through this and thinking about it a bit, my choice would be option 3, that we keep it and license it.
Anyone else? Counselor Hoodle?
I don't have a question, but am I correct when I was reading this, that this process started in 2016? I guess my question is, why does it take 8 years?
So it did start in 2016. And the township was working through the process with the Johnsons. And then they kind of stopped, not for any real, like a negative reason, but when we reached out to the Johnsons to just see if they wanted to continue through the process, he indicated that COVID had been pretty hard on their family, and so they had just sort of stepped back from it. And then they now have somebody new in the family who's dealing with the process and seems a bit more proactive.
Any other comments? Okay, so on the floor is the resolution. In favor? One that's there, and that is exchange the land. There are two other boat launches in the area. It's not like it's a standalone. Are we okay to vote on this now? In favor of the motion? 1, 2, 3, 4 opposed. 4.
Has somebody gone out and looked at this piece of property? I know I was involved in this back when it initially came, 2016, whatever it was. And I think it was because they had a septic system on the road allowance there to the water. And that's why they wanted that piece of property. But I have never been back since then, and I don't know this piece of property that they're wanting to give us, whether it's accessible to the lake, or is it just into the swamp bay there, or what is?
Darwin?
Brooks got an answer?
Mr. Mayor, through you, we looked at the end of the bay where this access would probably be located. It's a shallow bay. That's probably dry when the water is low. It's not an ideal boat launch or access, but I've just been involved with the proposed location for an entrance on Myers Cave Road. And the proposed location would be acceptable. And the roadway or access down to the lake. I could review closer and based on the resolution, but I think it would be acceptable too. And you're right, it was delayed because they were doing a new septic system and locating it. And that was completed a couple of years ago. So this proposed location avoids the location of the septic system.
Okay. So this is me, I'm electrified. Yeah, it's the metal fence. It's one of the. Seems bad. Think it's the computer? Okay, so I'm gonna call a vote again. Are we in favor of this resolution? 1, 2, 3, 4 opposed, sorry, 5 opposed. 1. Which way did you vote, Wayne? Okay. Okay. That resolution's carried. Okay, so item 11D, Manager Community Developments Grant Opportunity, proposed accessible entrance door at the Barrie Community Hall.
Moved by Counselor Hermer, seconded by Counselor Fowler. Be it resolved that council receives for information the Manager of Community Development's administrative report entitled Grant Opportunity Proposed Accessible Entrance Door at the Barrie Community Hall, and the council approves the MCD's application to the 2024 FCC Agri-Spirit Fund for 100% project funding, and the council directs the CAO to sign the application for funding and to enter into a funding agreement with the FCC Agri-Spirit Fund upon the township's successful application for 100% funding, and the council directs the MCD to have the new accessible door installed at the Barrie Community Hall if the application for funding is successful.
Comments? Counselor Hoodle.
So I think this is a great idea, and I'm just reading the next report because it's the same one. You're getting accessible doors, yet we don't have accessible washrooms. So what I'm suggesting is, can you combine to one larger grant, and whichever hall you pick, put an accessible washroom and a door in?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in an ideal world, yes, that would be the goal. It's just, we just got these grants to be able to put accessible washrooms in. You need pre-engineering, you need a lot of scope to the project that we don't currently have. It's something that we need to get to be grant ready, but we don't have that engineering currently.
So can I suggest, we talked about it before in our strategic plan about having shovel-ready projects, that maybe we spend a little money, get an engineer consultant to design that, so when a grant is available, because it's nice, I agree, it's nice to have the accessible doors, but you invite people in who need that, and yet where do they go to the bathroom?
Okay, so Snow Road read into this as well. When we refurbished the hall, put the addition on, we had an accessible door installed and a ramp. Okay, the ramp had already been there. We rebuilt that and the doors. But the people could get in the building, they couldn't go to the washroom. But you can get them in the building at the first chore. Then you go to put them into the washroom. Well, we didn't have accessible doors, but you need a handicap accessible washroom. And that is not 3 by 3. That's like 6 by 8 or something. It's huge. It used to be where if you had a wheelchair radius of through a diameter of 5 feet, you were good to go. It's a lot more than that now. It was a $75,000 or $80,000 project just to build the washrooms on Snow Road. So it's a longer thinking version. I agree with you. We should be going there. But the first step is to get the people in the door. And then we can build on the next one.
Yeah, all I'm asking is we could be ready for a grant, like, when the grant's available and they ask for shovel-ready projects. And like Brooke said, it takes a while to get, the design of this. It may be worth to set a sort of a generic design that could be used for all and over the years. I know we can't do this all at once, but we have to plan ahead for it.
Only got 2 to worry about it. Or Harlow too, do we?
The washrooms at Harlow would need to be updated. They do have an accessible door.
Okay. So on the floor is the grant. Deputy Mayor?
My concern, Brooke, is just that you be a little careful about, I see you've got $15,000 per door. I want you to look pretty carefully at the function of these, like typically, I'm thinking of Claremelle, you come up, you push a button, it's the middle of winter, a single door opens and it opens for 10 or 15 seconds. You cool off the whole hall. Normally, these accessible doors have a vestibule system. We don't have that at either hall. So if you put in a push button door, and I've seen this in other halls, and you get in, you try to get in with a wheelchair, it stays open. It's very problematic for heating the building. And also people will often lean against the wall inadvertently and the door opens. I've seen that. So you're trying to improve a situation in a hall and you end up making it really difficult in some ways if you're not very careful about the details of that design.
And the issue is our halls are generally not big enough to put to construct the vestibule on the inside, which would be the cheapest way to do it. Then you need a second set of doors. Yeah. It's never ending. Where do you start or where do you stop? So anyway, who's in favor of this motion? That motion's carried. Second one, 11E, Grant opportunity, proposed accessible entrance to the Clare Mill Community Hall.
Moved by Counselor Fowler, seconded by Counselor Hermer. Be it resolved, the council receives for information the Manager of Community Development's administrative report entitled Grant Opportunity, Proposed Accessible Entrance Door at Clare Mill Community Hall, and that council approves the MCD's application to the 2024 Inclusive Communities Grant Program for 100% funding, and the council directs the CAO to sign the application for funding and to enter into a funding agreement with the Ministry for Seniors and Accessibility upon the township's successful application for 100% funding, and the council directs the MCD to have the new accessible door installed at the Clare Mill Community Hall if the application for funding is successful.
Yes.
Just out of curiosity, if we were building a new hall, we would have to put in accessible washrooms. So we're grandfathered in this that we don't,
We have to get there. Okay, population's aging. So there's a difference in cost. So these doors are $5,000 more than the other one?
Yeah, it's just the design of the Plevna Hall is a little different with a two-door and how it's designed. It's just an estimate at this time based on verbal conversations on the phone, but we need to get detailed quotes. But it's anticipated to be a little more costly at Clare Mill.
Not exactly related to this, but we've been applying for a number of grants. Do you have a checklist somewhere that says grant A, this is where it is, we've applied, waiting to hear, you know, that maybe it could be presented to council on a routine basis? I would imagine if you don't have one, it would help yourself as well.
We definitely have track of where all our grants are and their statuses, if that's something you want provided to council.
Well, you think quarterly, every 3 months, so we know. You know. Okay, so in favor of this motion? Carried. Okay, the next one is 11F. Township Community Hall rentals, bylaws and fees.
Moved by Counselor Hermer, seconded by Counselor Fowler. Be it resolved that council receives for information the Manager of Community Development's administrative report entitled Township Community Hall Rentals Bylaw and Fees, and the council approves in principle the amendments to the fees and charges bylaw, section L, with the following effective January 1st, 2025. Full day with liquor, $160 plus $100 refundable deposit. Full day without liquor, $80, half day, $45. Local community groups and church groups, $15. Community hall committee meetings, no charge. Funeral receptions, lunches, donation. Remove community hall volunteers appointed by council and in charge of the community hall rentals. And that council instructs the clerk to schedule a public meeting to amend the fees and charges bylaw at an upcoming meeting. And that council will consider a bylaw later in the meeting to repeal bylaw 5322 and adopt a new bylaw to approve the municipal community hall rental agreement and rental rules and regulations.
Comments? Counselor Fowler?
Yes, to remove the community hall volunteers, why is that happening? I think I know the answer, but
It's mainly just a housekeeping and that they won't be looking after the fees anymore or hall rentals with the new system. They're still gonna be volunteers and they're still appointed by council. They're just not directly related to the fees.
Deputy Mayor?
I would congratulate you for keeping the $15 fee constant. That's what a lot of people would squawk about if it changed.
I thought the fee structure was well done too. Okay, in favor of this motion? Motion is carried. Okay. There we go. So I'd like to take a 7-minute break. Sorry. I'll do it next. Yeah, I just want to do that. Okay, so let's take a break till 11:15. Item 12A, Economic Development Task Force.
Moved by Counselor Regent, seconded by Counselor Good. Be it resolved that council receives for information the notes of a meeting of the Economic Development Task Force dated April 15th, 2024. And the council approves the installation of the murals as recommended by the EDTF at the following locations: Buckshot Lake Boat Launch, Shabamika Lake Boat Launch, Koch Cove Lane, Kashwakimak Lake Boat Launch, South Bush Road Crotch Lake Boat Launch, and River Road Boat Launch. The EDTF will consider putting one in the Norcan Lake area should an artist submit from that area.
Comments? Deputy Mayor?
I asked a Narcan Lake resident if they could think of an artist. So far, can't think of an artist, so we may not end up with a mural up there. Other than that. Oh, I want to comment on this new subgroup within the EDTF that's looking at quote, barriers to housing.
Yeah, well, wait a minute.
Sorry, is this not?
Okay, well, let's do the resolution, okay? Well, I guess you're right, because it's inside the notes. Okay, go.
So my comment is that there's four of us, the chair, myself, and two other members who are looking at barriers to housing. And I think this idea originally came up from a comment that one of our members made about zoning in this township, which makes it difficult to adapt certain kinds of new housing, tiny houses, for example, that makes it really difficult to do some innovative new things. So our intent was primarily to look at the zoning bylaw to see if we could make some recommendations for changes in the future. And that's morphed into something slightly bigger now, like financing opportunities and so on. So, but the other thing is, we don't want this to interfere with the other initiative, which is seniors affordable housing. We're not talking about seniors, we're just talking about affordable housing, which has emerged as a huge issue.
Not going away. Okay, any additional comments on this particular item? Councilor Good?
Mural Gull Lake Boat Launch, that could be looked at sometime in the future.
Didn't we talk about that, Stephanie? There's a problem there, property?
Brooke, do you recall what that was about?
Yeah, so in specific, we looked at the Thompson landing there, and the concern there was there's already not a lot of room to turn around. We just didn't want to have issues with the mural being backed into or being along the side, just because there's not a lot of space there. Not that it's out of the question, but just concerned we don't want to damage any of the murals either, because it's already a tight location.
Okay, in favor of the resolution? Opposed? Carried. Item 13, does anyone wish to give motion of notice or notice of motion? Seeing none. Item 14, we have no motions, written notices. Item 15, council verbal reports. So the council meeting was held on April the 17th at the county level. Healthcare was a big issue. Wolf Island made the township of Frontenac Islands made a request to the county for upwards of $20,000 to fund the establishment of a nurse practitioner on the island. They had a medical clinic there, and over the past year, the doctors gradually pulled their services out back into Kingston. And the last one to go was the nurse practitioner. So they thought that we have $20,000 as a county for a procurement of medical support or medical staff, and that they should get that. And I said, I'm fine with that, provided North Frontenac gets the very same amount, because we have no medical care whatsoever here, and we're just as far or farther away than you are. Generated a little bit of discussion. At the same time, the county is also looking at an initiative across the entire county about how to handle medical procurement. And of course, they're looking at Charlotte Lake and South, and I stood up and I says, I think I'd like to include the Northland, or Northbrook Land O'Lakes Family Health Team, because it serves approximately 50% of Township of North Frontenac. So they said they would look at it, so I don't know what that means. The wording in the document has to be situated within North Frontenac boundaries. I'm going, we've got a lot of money sitting in this, it'd be nice to get some of it back or be recognized. And while we're on that, Charlotte Lake Family Health Team has now partnered with Tay River Health in Perth. Okay. So, Fairmont Home continues to be a big issue. They partnered with 8 or 7 other homes, and they did a family and resident annual satisfaction survey. 615 results, 375 were residents and 240 were family. Fairmont of those had 70 responses. Overall satisfaction, 94%, and the others were about 93. So that's consistent. The planning department put the K&P trail forward for us to lease the section from Snow Road or 509 and Snow Road up to the Lanark County line. And both Councillor Fowler and I suggested that what's the hurry? The county has a resolution on the books to buy this piece of property for $1, provided it's encumbrance free, and they're working on one last encumbrance at the Lanark North Frontenac line. And so what's the hurry? And if we lease it, it was $10 a year. It's not the money. The fact that someone may start upgrading this portion of the trail, we could sink in a lot of money. And all of a sudden, MVCA loses the court case at the other end. So the county council voted to defer this for 6 months. And hopefully we'll have a result from the current court case. We shall see. You may read about Howe Island Ferry. There is an issue with the way it's operated. It really doesn't impact us, but it certainly takes a lot of time up in council. And as far as the NFLA goes, I had a meeting with Bruce Moore yesterday. It was just a catch up. Here's where we are, what's happened since the winter. He's looking forward to talking with Roy and the Environmental Task Force. And the meeting, it's hard to say if it was productive or not, but it sure was not unproductive. So we've agreed to meet again. So that's my presentation. Councillor Good.
I've got ongoing shore road allowances to go look at. I got another one just came in to look at. And the only lake association is the Cache Lake AGM, and in Northbrook on the 13th of July is coming up. We guess we'll have invitations for that. A bunch of us. That's it. Regent.
No, in all of these areas, there's really nothing new that different from our last meeting. We should be having a meeting soon with the OPP Detachment Board, but other than that, everything at the clinic is about status quo, and the lake associations, I'm sure we will all be looking forward to that soon.
Hoodle.
On April 8th, we had our 56th annual MVC general meeting. It was quite informative. It actually opened up with a spudging ceremony that I've never been part of, so that was interesting. Financial statements were provided in the audit report and was all passed by, approved by the board. There was a watershed report done by Jennifer, and I believe she's coming to our council in June to do a presentation. I had asked her as a board member to come in and provide the information on the watershed. Sally presented her annual report. It was quite informative and quite detailed. So if anybody wants to look at it, just let me know and I'll send it to you. Paul Kehoe was elected as the chair for another term. Yesterday, April 25th, I attended the Frontenac Municipal Services Corporation Technical Committee. We had 3 presentations, one by a company called Near Systems Group, and they specialize in decentralized systems, septic and water purification. We had a presentation by the Source Protection Committees from the various conservation authorities, talking about regulations and what it's going to take once we get to that point. And there was a presentation by Lindsay Blair representing EORN, and more about that to come in future meetings, which was quite good. And yes, I got an invitation from Malcolm Lake to attend their AGM on June 8th.
You, Councillor Hermer,
Nothing to report.
Councillor Fowler,
Yes, the Eastern Ontario Trails Alliance, on June 1st, they'll be celebrating their 25 years. I'll give you more information when I get details later on. Haven't heard anything from the lake associations, although our next SALT meeting, which is going to be on May 7th at the Clare Mill Hall, and it's about marine safety put on by the OPP officer, Bob Martell. And we'll be supplying food. Our next meeting after that will be May 16th, and there will be picking new titles and dates for next presentation starting in the fall.
Councillor Ingles.
I have nothing to report from the Lake Associations. I did have an informal meeting recently with Bruce Moore as chair of the NFLAA, just discussing matters in general. I expect I'll start hearing from Palmerston, Conato, maybe Mosk Lake. Is Mosk Lake in Ward 1? Can't remember. I think it's in Ward 2.
Ward 2.
Yeah. And maybe Sunday Lake this year.
Okay. All right, so now we're going to go into closed.
Moved by Councillor Regent, second by Councillor Good. Be resolved that council retires to closed session at 11:28 a.m. to adopt minutes of closed meeting dated February 23rd, 2024, and to discuss personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal or local board employees, specifically an appointment to a board.
Just Kelly. We wait till the Adams family comes back in. Welcome back, everyone. We've just left our closed session. We discussed and approved the appointment of, where did it go? Should know this. The appointment of Fraser Rogers as a shared member between North and Central Frontenac to the Frontenac OPP Detachment Board as recommended by the 2 CAOs of the 2 townships. Or are you going to do that first?
Moved by Councillor Regent, seconded by Councillor Good. Be it resolved that council appoints Fraser Rogers as a shared member to the Frontenac OPP Detachment Board as recommended by the 2 CAOs.
Yeah, the second item we discussed was the appointment of a new fire chief. Welcome, Alan. Glad to have you on board. And your appointment will be official in about 1 minute. So it's under this next item. Okay. So we're into the introduction and reading of bylaws.
Moved by Councillor Regent, seconded by Councillor Good. Be it resolved that leave be given to the mover to introduce the following bylaws that have been circulated to all members of council. Bylaw 2024-31, road allowance closure, Tyrell, Salazay. 2024-32, to opt out of the provisions of the Line Fences Act. 2024-34, zoning bylaw amendment ward. 2024-35, agreement with Claremont Volunteer Group to collect returnables at waste sites. 2024-36, community hall rental bylaw and repealing bylaw 5322. Bylaw 2024-37 to appoint Director of Emergency Services Fire Chief, and bylaw 2024-38 to appoint a Community Emergency Management Coordinator. And that these bylaws be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed.
Any comments? Counselor Hermer. I actually thought you were, I thought maybe you were bringing it. Okay, okay. Okay, there you go. Okay, any other comment of a more serious nature? Okay. Okay, all in favor? Bylaws are carried. Public forum, is anybody in the council chamber have anything to say about any of the items on our agenda today? Or anybody online?
Anybody online wishing to speak, please use the raise hand feature. Seeing none.
Seeing none, confirmatory bylaw, item 20.
Moved by Counselor Regent, second by Counselor Good, be it resolved that bylaw 2024-39, being a bylaw to confirm all actions and proceedings of council for its regular meeting held April 26, 2024, be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed.
Comments? In favor? Carried. Adjournment.
Moved by Counselor Regent, second by Counselor Good, be it resolved that council adjourns the meeting at 11:56 a.m. until May 16th, 2024, or at the call of the chair.
Comments? In favor? Of course. Carried.